All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to unpack a struggle that feels so incredibly modern, but is actually remarkably ancient. Today, we're looking at how the absolute most powerful men in human history fought the exact same dawn battle against, well, the snooze button that we fight every single day. We're going to examine two legendary figures from totally different worlds who came to the exact same conclusion about how to start the day. Picture your own morning for a second. The alarm goes off. You know exactly what you should do. You know you should get up, be disciplined, tackle the day, and be that person you promised yourself you were going to be. But instead, what actually happens? You roll over, you grab your phone, you tell yourself, you know what, I'll just start tomorrow. So why do we do it? Why do we yield to the temptation of warm blankets when we absolutely know better? Well, here is the secret that nobody really tells you. Neither of the two historical titans we're looking at today were naturally born disciplined. They didn't just wake up effortlessly energized every single day. They had to actively, brutally build that discipline. And the crazy part? The way they built it was practically identical. Let's start with Marcus Aurelius. He became the Roman emperor in 161 AD, known as one of the five good emperors because his reign was defined by fairness and wisdom. Now, this guy had literal absolute power. He could feast every night and sleep until noon, and nobody could stop him. Yet he completely rejected that kind of indulgence. He knew that a soft emperor makes for a corrupt empire. So he chose simple bedding to avoid softening his resolve, and he wrote his famous meditations in the early hours of the morning, often stationed out in freezing cold military camps. It's just wild to think that we have the private journal entries of the most powerful man on earth, and he's literally arguing with himself at dawn. These weren't written for an audience. He didn't have some magic formula for getting out of bed. He simply asked himself this daily, piercing question: am I doing what I was made for, or am I just hiding from it? He realized that if he yielded to comfort at sunrise, it would just make it that much easier to yield to every other temptation throughout the day, which directly impacted his ability to rule with unyielding justice. Now, fast forward about 500 years, and we find a completely different leader. Umar ibn al-Khattab started out in Mecca as one of Islam's most feared enemies. He was this well-educated, physically imposing wrestler with a pretty violent temper. But upon accepting Islam, he transformed himself into an incredibly ascetic caliph. The sheer shock of this feared warrior intentionally choosing a life of absolute simplicity is profound. He was so organized that he actually became the first to introduce organized police forces to keep civil order, which became a real hallmark of his deeply practical leadership style. The details historians recorded about Omar's nights will literally stop you cold. In stark contrast to his unmatched worldly power over two entire empires, he lived in voluntary asceticism. He would patrol the streets of Medina entirely alone in the dark, just to check on his people, a deeply empathetic approach to governance that required total self-mastery. He wept in prayer, he fasted repeatedly, and he wore clothes so incredibly simple that foreign dignitaries visiting the greatest empire on earth initially mistook its leader for a beggar. It proves a fundamental truth here. He had to fully discipline himself before he could ever fairly discipline an empire. And here's the thing. This wasn't just some nice philosophical quote for Omar. This was his literal alarm clock pulling him forward before Fajr, the dawn prayer. Every single morning, Umar rose knowing he was being watched by a higher power, not out of some paralyzing fear, but as a high standard that actively pulled him out of bed before the rest of the world even woke up. So look at this parallel. Two leaders from entirely different centuries, different faiths, different civilizations, yet they reached the exact same conclusion. The morning is where discipline is built or broken. This is where their shared values truly align. Marcus Aurelius utilized the Stoic practice of mentally preparing for the day's hardships, ingratitude, and interference before they even arrived. Meanwhile, Umar practiced morning adhkar, these remembrances recited at dawn that served as spiritual armor. They used different methods, sure, but they shared the exact same goal. An undisciplined mind wakes up reactive, but a disciplined mind wakes up intentional. Which really brings us to the modern crisis. We are currently living in the most distracted era in human history. Right now, the average person checks their phone within just 3 minutes of waking up. 3 minutes! Before they've even had a chance to think, to pray, or to intentionally decide who they're going to be that day, they're letting an algorithm decide their day for them. Marcus warned his followers against the theft of time through idle entertainment and gossip because time is the one resource you can literally never recover once it's spent. And Umar's warning here hits the nail on the head. Laziness and procrastination inevitably lead to negligence. This perfectly describes the modern trap of telling ourselves we'll just change later or start later. But as the source material makes incredibly clear, later is exactly where discipline goes to die. Okay, so how do we actually apply this? Let's break it down into 3 direct, actionable steps straight from their shared habits. First, ask your purpose the absolute second you wake up, just like Marcus did. Second, arm yourself for the day before you face it, mentally prepare for interference, or use spiritual remembrances to ground yourself. And third, eliminate delay entirely. Do not give laziness the space to breed negligence. Get up.
To really pull this off, we have to completely redefine what discipline actually means. It's not a personality trait. It is a choice made before you even feel like making it. Marcus Aurelius viewed self-discipline as ultimate freedom. He realized that the undisciplined mind is actually trapped in the slavery of comfort, impulse, and fear. The disciplined mind, on the other hand, charts its own course no matter what external circumstances are thrown its way.
This profound shift in perspective is completely embodied by Umar. Remember, this was a man who once set out to kill the Prophet of Islam, but completely transformed to become one of his greatest caliphs, leading with extraordinary empathy. It's the ultimate proof that mastering internal control can transform a person completely. True strength isn't about external force, it's about absolute internal governance. Both Marcus and Umar had every excuse in the world to be soft and slip into comfort, but they completely refused. So we'll leave it here. The battle for your potential, it isn't happening out there in the world. It begins the exact moment your alarm goes off. Because how you start the morning dictates how you live the day, and how you live the day dictates who you become. You have to decide in that single split second, are you going to choose the slavery of comfort, or will you choose the ultimate freedom of discipline?